title of this panel is T-shaped and transferable: game design skills within and beyond the games industry. And so I'll just give a little bit of a kind of intro for what that's about, and then we'll get to talking with our amazing guests. So one of the big ideas of the Games Academy is that it encourages, its graduates to be T-shaped. And what that means is the idea of having a broad foundation of skills and an area of deep specialization. So this idea of being T-shaped, it's related to another sort of goal or aspiration, which is the idea of transferability. And the notion of transferability is being able to apply game design skills in a lot of different places, including in places sort of outside of games per se. So software development or graphic design or marketing or interior design, which I think we're going to hear a little bit more about today. So in this panel, we would really like to hear from our guests about everything they're doing. We just want to catch up in general, but also we want to hear about all the ways in which our guests might be T-shaped, might be versatile in their skill sets and broad in that way, and how this might have enabled them to find fulfilling employment in a variety of different areas. So that's kind of what we're all about today: is T-shaped and transferable and game design more broadly, I guess. So okay. Um, First question for the panelists. I would be really happy if each person could sort of briefly introduce themselves. And what I'm interested in specifically would be sort of name, followed by where you work, followed by what your job title is there. So we'll just start with that basic introduction: name, where you work, and your job title. And maybe we might start with Ben because he's next to me.
Okay. I'm Benjamin Emden. I am a game designer. Up until recently, I was working at Ballistic Moon on the Until Dawn 2024 that came out towards the end of last year. At the moment, I'm just looking for a new role, but yeah.
Very cool, super exciting. And moving on to Will.
Yeah, hi, my name is Will Izotta. I currently work at Ubisoft Reflections, where I'm an associate producer.
Awesome, very good. And then Cassie.
Hi, I'm Cassie Cornish. I'm currently a junior narrative designer at Meteor Pixel.
Very cool. And Stephen.
Yeah, Stephen Sizer. I currently work for Wren as an interior kitchen designer.
Awesome, very cool. So the perfect example of T-shaped and transferability and all that. That's awesome. Okay, well, cool. So, when we're interviewing prospective students, a lot of times we ask them to sort of say, what do you think an average day in the life of a game designer would be like, an average working day? But now that we have you four here, we can actually ask you. We can sort of find out what that is. So, my second question, I would like to know, what does an average working day in sort of your life look like? So, a day of work, whether it's a game design you're doing, interior design, whatever it might be. I would like to know more about, an average day there. So, we'll just stick with the order we're in. Why not? So, Ben, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, I guess an average day for me is I wake up, start looking at, open up the project files and stuff, pull whatever changes have been made from yesterday, go to stand up, and then like discuss with the team like what we're going to do today, go through all of the different the agile stuff of like what I need to do, what's blocking me, um, how long is it going to take, those kinds of things, and then I would just kind of spend the morning working through those tasks, have lunch, have something nice to eat, and then spend the afternoon either finishing up what I was doing this morning or working on something else or fixing issues that I found with the thing that I was doing this morning. And then yeah, I guess that's pretty much what I do in the day. And then I'd probably find a game to play afterwards.
Awesome. Yeah. Good to have games in all part of your life. And so it sounds like the kind of, the agile methodology and stand-up meetings and all that stuff, that's something that you're kind of using day to day.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely always communicating with other people. Pretty much, I probably will be constantly sending messages to other people on the team, like throughout the day, especially when I run into issues which I might need help with from people from other departments, with other specialisms, or just talking to like my producer about like the issues that I've run into. Because there's a lot of times where you'll have like an issue which you find it, but like it's not your job to fix it because you have this other task you have to do. So you just have to let someone else know about it, and then they can assign time for that to be fixed soon or later, depending on how important it is.
Fascinating. Really, really interesting. And what about you, Will? What does an average day at work look like for you?
Well, so I guess certainly at the beginning, kind of similar to what Ben just described. So, from the production side, it's kind of our job to set up and run those morning kind of stand-ups. Again, at Ubisoft, it's typically, or certainly the team I'm in at Ubisoft, it's daily, where we'll essentially ask the team three questions. What did you work on yesterday? What are you working on now? Is anything getting in your way or blocking you? Once beyond that point, though, I guess it becomes harder to describe a typical day because essentially the job of a producer is to put out fires that aren't the developer's job to put out, so that they're not wasting their time, doing the thing, not doing the thing that they're best at. So that can be anything from, oh, this piece of software is constantly crashing. Can we, get someone to look into that? Or the developer might be blocked on something and might need someone, may need someone from a different team or different department to unblock them on that particular thing, and it's our job to kind of follow up with that. Um, Additionally, there are things like on a slightly more ad hoc basis, we'll have things like sprint planning, scoping out work, taking the team through the planning process, and making sure, and also just making sure that our teams aren't being stretched beyond their limits. So making sure that the workload is manageable, and that when unforeseen circumstances come up, as they often do, that causes either delays or the scale of a job is bigger than expected, that we're able to help our teams kind of get through that, get through that, and to manage their workload appropriately so people aren't overwhelmed.
No, that's fascinating. And so, following up on that kind of workload management idea, without giving away any secrets with your company, I'd be interested to know, do you use kind of burn down charts? Do you use anything to kind of track that workload, or how do you do that?
Yeah, we do. So Ubisoft, we're quite lucky in that we've got we basically have in-house tools that are very well tailored to that. So we have essentially we have a decent chunk of my job is Excel, essentially. So
Sure.
we have these Excel plugins that can sort of communicate directly with Jira, tables that essentially can essentially take the information about various tasks that a team member has committed to for a given sprint, how much time they've got left, how much availability we sort of want to keep spare in case of unforeseen issues and things like that. And essentially, we just want to make sure that I guess that percentage sort of stays, you know, less than 100% essentially. Because if someone has 110% of their time committed, something's gone wrong somewhere, and that needs to be looked into. But
Right.
we do also use things like burn down charts. That's often used more for towards the end of a sprint for sort of I guess looking back in retrospectives and sort of working out how things have gone. We ideally obviously want the burn charts to go down to zero. Not always the case, but yeah, that's the.
Fascinating. No, that's really helpful. And what about you, Cassie? What does a sort of average day at work look like for you?
Yes, so before I started at my current job, I was working at Ballistic Moon with Ben, so I can echo what he said for that studio. My current studio is quite small. It's an indie outsourcing slash co-dev studio. And on my current project, there are, I think, a maximum of 15 of us on the whole project. So similarly, we'll start with stand up, share a few memes. We have a thing at the moment where someone will put a screenshot from an obscure game and people try and guess what game it is. Most of the team are a fair bit older than me, so I don't get many of them right. And then we'll go over what the current task is if you need any help, just like in a lot of other places, I think. And often we'll then follow up with a meeting between design and engineering, or between art and design. And I'm one of two designers on the whole project. So I may be the junior narrative designer, but I'm also the only narrative designer. So the gameplay designer and I'll often be in talks with engineers saying, "Hey, can you make this for us?" Or I made this thing. Can you check it isn't really bad because I'm not a programmer? Um, or we'll be in meetings directly with our client on their ideas. For me, translating it into narrative beats and also trying to get world building elements into what our gameplay designer has made. and then we'll be getting to work. So for me, that could be anything from writing a world building document on a certain level, ideating on narrative beats that could be within a level to keep it exciting, or reviewing current plot bits that have already been written up, just from my own perspective, giving ideas and feedback. um, or most recently, I've been making puzzles. So I do work in Engine a lot as well. We're working in Unreal for this project, so I've been making puzzles that happen in a level, and engineering that in blueprints and so on. So sometimes I'll be in Miro doing diagrams of how a level's going to pan out. It's quite very really, could be anything. And then at the end of the day, if it's a Friday, we have a show and tell where people show the rest of the team what we've done this week. Um, and yeah, clock out about 5. Oh, we do have lunch though. They let us have lunch. It's all good. I'm sorry, I forgot that one.
No, that's good. That's important. Um, I was really interested in something you said where you mentioned the idea of working kind of world building material into the rest of the game design.
Yes.
Would you say that there's a lot of kind of back and forth with systems designers, a lot of communication with other people on the team, or how does that work?
I think there would be if the team was bigger,
Sure.
but it's more just I'll say, "Hey, client, what do you think of this?" And he goes, "Ooh, yeah, I didn't think of that. That would be cool." And I say, "Gameplay designer, is that good with you?" And he says, "Yeah." It's a small enough team that you don't get huge meetings with a lot of faff in them.
Good.
Really, it's I know that has to happen with huge teams. You
Sure.
need to keep everyone in the loop, but with a small team, it doesn't feel like the stakes are as high. It might particularly be because we're in very much pre-production and it's still very much an ideating phase, and the client is very happy for us to try whatever we think would be fun. Find the fun is what we're working on at the moment.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Now that's fascinating. And Stephen, I would be especially interested in what a day-to-day, average day for you looks like. Because I heard you talking earlier about resemblances between kind of interior design workflow and game design workflow. So yeah, average day for you at Ren.
It's probably starts out as a bit of a quite similar, but also contrasting in very similar in different ways. It's as soon as we get in, sort of every morning is sort of a half an hour team meeting, all of us together, exactly what's going on, if anybody's run into any trouble, if there's any issues, if they can't get something to work, like a hob or oven doesn't fit in this particular configuration or tower, so on and so forth. So it's a lot of catch up on the previous day. We sort of work in 2-week rotations as well as a sort of sprint, because that's normally when either promotions or special offers sort of change. Some items might change, there might be some new appliances, stuff like that. After the morning meeting, it sort of just snowballs straight into the job. You normally either have an appointment or you're looking for appointments or just talking to customers in general. Appointment wise, you'll do the meet and greet as always. It's normally welcome coffees, how do you take your tea, so on and so forth for the first sort of 5 minutes, break the ice, get to know them, because they sort of become like your investor in a way from games. We're essentially glorified level designers, really. You're making a unique level for each of these people for their own kitchen or bedroom, or we do utilities, any sort of interior space in the home that would need some of our products. So I like to do it in a way where we break it down in a wish list, some of their absolute musts, what they need, what they must have, no compromise whatsoever. And then I tend to sort of build from there. So it's sort of a top-down structure for my own design. We then just go straight into it, straight into the software. They sit down on the sofa. I'm at the computer, just plunking away, just creating it as it goes. And there's probably not a more iterative scenario because they will just absolutely run off loads of different ideas or crazy things that they might want to put in the kitchen or the space or a different layout. We normally preface it as well by doing 3 quick ones before they even turn up. So we'll prep for the day, prep for the appointment, just to give them some inspiration, some idea. Towards the end, obviously, it's the scary part of the money and getting them to put down a deposit and going from there afterwards. Throughout the rest of the day, it will be either more appointments, or we do also do plan checks. So other designers will sit in with each other and we'll go over what could be an issue, what might not be an issue, because the bottom line for us is not getting free issues. If we design something wrong, it's our neck's on the line. So it's nice to have a second pair of eyes, go over whatever you've designed and just question it or pick out what might come up as a problem for our compliance team, because they're the ones with the iron hammer that will just go, yeah, you can't do that. Obviously, lunch is quite free flowing depending on your appointments. We sort of take it here and there for when we can for the day, and then rounding out for the end of the day, we normally just clean up, tidy up, and the end of the day is mostly for annotations. So if we've done some particularly interesting or crazy designs where we've modified units or made some sort of amalgamation of units, like a nice island that has quartz downturns and curves, we need to annotate it to the moon. Otherwise, the installers don't know exactly how it's going to be installed. So we normally leave that, or I do, towards the end of the day when it's a little quieter.
Now that's fascinating. And when you talk about iterating and building layouts and annotations and that kind of thing, I mean, that sounds a lot like working in a game engine. It sounds a lot like doing documentation. Um, you know, do you see those resemblances in your software between kind of that and sort of the level design process?
Yeah, the most I can sort of say is it's all purpose built. It's all in-house purpose built stuff by Ren for Ren.
Sure.
So we even have we use Jira to talk to the software team. If there's a feature or something or a bug or anything going wrong, it's straight to Jira, straight to the software team, and they get back to you within normally about 5 or 10 minutes, which is really good. But even the software that we use is almost a mirror image of Unity, really. It's sort of like Inspector down one side where you can change the individual components of a cabinet, what's inside it, if you want cornice, so the fancy bits on the top and the bottom. And then over on the left is sort of like your hierarchy as well. And in the middle is your 3D meat and potatoes. So even down to that, it is surprisingly similar. It's crazy how much it does actually cross over into what we learn here in the design process for 3 years. It was a bit strange. I got to their training in Hull and it was all the same hotkeys, all the same shortcuts. So I just sat down and went, this is nice and familiar, and just got on with it quite quickly, which was really reassuring. But yeah, in terms of documentation wise, very similar to a GDD, exactly how your game sort of needs to function or work to your the other disciplines and everybody else you're working with. The annotations for us is just a really long sheet of paper that is installer, please don't install it wrong.
No, that is absolutely fascinating. That is really cool. Well, let's see, moving on to some other questions. So maybe thinking about the T-shaped portion of the panel for a second. I would be really interested in hearing, the ways in which you might be T-shaped. That could be talking about, your area of deep specialization, so kind of the crossbar of the T. That could be any ways that you might work outside of that specialization. So that could be kind of the foundation of the T. And I would be interested in knowing if you leverage any skill sets sort of outside of design per se, whether it might be a little bit of art or writing or any of those things. So that's a fair number of questions, but basically what it comes down to is in what ways might you be T-shaped in your work? So going to Ben.
All right. I guess when I think about what my work was like at Ballistic Moon, I think there's definitely two kinds of T-shaped. I feel like on our project in particular, which was that as a designer, I wasn't like particularly like just a designer for this or just a designer for that. It was like we were kind of given responsibility for like a level or like a section of the game, and like that responsibility can expand all the way to like the level design or like the cinema, like the camera design for like the gameplay camera, but also to like what happened, like maybe like alterations to like the narrative or how like I guess just how the experience is in general, but also like how the animations like often are added to the game, and like the audio and like where things are triggered and things like that. So I guess I feel like there's like a lot of T-shapedness in like not just like being like the designer who's doing the level design, but like the person who kind of works on all of the aspects of the design of the level, but also has to work kind of with like animators, audio designers, like programmers in particular, and all of the other specialisms really, to kind of like get those things into the game in a way that makes sense for how you want to design it. So I guess you spend a lot of time kind of talking to people from the other departments and like working with them, maybe even directly like in the software. I know, for example, when I was at BM, there was actually a period where I downloaded Maya so that I could fix up a bunch of animations because the changes that they needed were really, really small. Like I wouldn't call myself an animator, but a lot of the time the issues were just like, oh, this like animation just doesn't loop. So like you just have to like move the frames so that they kind of like blend together so that it doesn't like cut in the middle and things like that, just so that like the experience just feels higher quality. Like overall, it's not necessarily about being good at every other specialism. It's just kind of like knowing how to do like the basics and the different things so that you can design it the way that you want it.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and particularly that last bit about kind of T-shaping into animation,
Yeah,
which is highly technical, but as you say, just using that to kind of make the experience a little bit more fluid and satisfying. That's really cool.
I also think another important aspect of the job is figuring out how not to like break the repo,
Sure.
because a lot of the time you'll end up editing files that someone from a completely different department is editing. Happens a lot because our game had lots of different like companies working on it in
Hmm.
different places. So like you'd often end up in a situation where you're editing a file, then you realize that someone else is also editing the file, and then you have to talk to that person, and then you have to learn. Then like one of you probably has to like do the other person's work because that turns out to be the easiest solution. And also at the same time you're trying to like not give a headache to like the engineers who are like organizing the repository. So I think there's like a lot of value in knowing how all of that works, just so you don't create problems for your producers basically.
Yeah, so it sounds like good version control skills are essential there.
Definitely, I would say.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's really cool. And going to Will, in what ways might you be T-shaped? Will?
Well, I guess in a lot of ways, in production especially, you're almost sort of professionally T-shaped in that we are sort of expected to be able, or frequently you're going to be expected to be able to deal with essentially every sort of specialism potentially. So it's something that I've definitely had to come to terms with. That essentially, a lot of the time, as a producer, you're kind of the least knowledgeable person in the room at
Wow.
any given time
Wow.
because you're working directly with the specialists who spent years, honing these crafts. But I've been in the industry for just over 3 years now, and I've
Hmm.
worked with level designers, artists, programmers, just oftentimes kind of simultaneously. And so making those transitions, some of the most recent transition I made was going from working primarily with level designers and artists to working primarily with programmers. And one of the big things there it's obviously I've got my area of specialization, the vertical bit of the T for me is project management. The horizontal bit of the T for me is, I guess, kind of just learning a new set of learning new vocabulary for working with these different teams. There are shorthands that you kind of need to eventually be able to learn. When I started working with level designers, I wasn't 100% sure what a grey box was, or with artists, texture wrapping. Oh, okay, I kind of have a vague idea. Global illumination, what the hell's that? And then I think the most recent one, I remember having a conversation. Moving to tech teams was especially intimidating. I was having a conversation with one of our programmers who was talking about in a team he'd worked in previously how it was very difficult because everyone was working in different languages. And I was going, oh God, and I was thinking to myself, God, yeah, that sounds really. Imagine working, you're speaking English, and you're working with someone who only speaks Spanish, and someone else who only speaks French. And then a little bit later on, he talks about continuing that sort of train of thought. He then goes, yeah, because I obviously special in C++, and I go, oh, you're talking about programming languages. And so it is just kind of, but getting to grips with, so essentially we have to develop this very, you know, surface level kind of understanding, or at least basically being able to go, when someone talks about when I'm talking to a programmer who's talking about languages, that is different from a narrative designer who might be talking about languages, say. So yeah, I guess that's probably the biggest area in which we sort of have to sort of develop those sort of T-shaped skills, I suppose.
Yeah, so it sounds like that there's a strong component of sort of interdisciplinary communication there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So I mean, oftentimes we act as the sort of certainly in the initial kind of communications link from one team to another. Um, and it goes back to a certain extent, not making it so that developers have to hunt down the right person to speak to. We need to kind of try to be able to sort of understand at least on a surface level what needs to be done, and then communicate that to the right team, so that then the experts can talk. But it's our job to a certain extent sometimes identify who that expert's going to be.
No, that is absolutely fascinating. And moving on to Cassie. Cassie, it sounds like that there's a strong T-shaped component to your skill set and your day-to-day activities. I'd like to hear more. Maybe?
Yeah, yeah. I agree with Ben when we worked on Until Dawn. It's very much being T-shaped within design and the different forms of design. Like you said, we did cinematics, we did animation, exporting animation blueprints, we did interaction steps, we did a lot of stuff, collision designing, um, some environmental little bits here and there, some set dressing and stuff. Um, but yeah, definitely within my current role, since it is a smaller studio, and since I am one of two designers, you have to do a little bit more of a variety of stuff in your role. Um, so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do my job if I didn't have a little bit of the tea in writing. Um, but I think, I don't know if you still do it, but the world building module we had at the start of year two, I think was great for me in learning how to build a narrative more. I love that project. Um, uh, for those who don't know, over the summer, start of year two, when I was here, um, you basically were tasked not with building a game, but with building a world a game might be set in. And I thought it was really fun. I loved it. Um, so that's definitely helped with my role. And I think the guys at work have been surprised sometimes when they'll be like, "Hey, careful, guys, there's a bug, just so you're all aware we're working on it." And then I'm like, "Okay, yeah, fixed." And they're like, "Why? What did you do? Why are you doing that? Engineer? Engineer? Are you an engineer? We'll invite you into the engineers channel." Um, and yeah, I do some set dressing and stuff. And yeah, I think a big part of being a designer is having a bit of that reach into other fields, and it helps you be better at design as a craft in itself. Um, yeah, I think in my current role, it's T-shaped in the sense of being your own team as well, I guess. And the communication is a huge part of that. Like, I was quite nervous starting my role and being like, wait, I'm going to be talking directly with the client about what I'm doing. Okay, and my ideas go straight to him. Okay, yeah. So, you've got, I guess, being T-shaped means you've got to have a bit of confidence in your specialism and a little bit outside of that. But yeah, definitely the writing side, I think, is where that's coming useful in my current role. But then also engineering, because I do work heavily in editor. Um, yeah,
Yeah, no, that's actually a really wide tee. There's all kinds of things
yeah,
going on there, especially that bit about kind of being your own team and directly interfacing with the client.
yeah.
That's
Being the
fascinating.
only one in my role is definitely interesting.
Sure.
And going from a team where we had quite a lot of people at Ballistic Moon, if you had an idea or something, you tell the senior designer who tells someone else. But then I tell me, and then I tell the client, and it's very interesting.
No, absolutely. That's really cool. And yeah, and so Stephen, I know, at least when I worked with you, you were very focused on level design, but it sounds like that you also are pretty T-shaped in your skill set. Would you say so?
Yeah, I try to be.
Yeah.
I've always tried to find something else as well. Especially in third year, I went quite heavily into VFX as well. So I ended up doing that for most of third year, which does keep you quite creative, and really was just a lot of fun, to be honest, making everything look sparkly and massive smoke clouds, gunshots, the whole shebang. Um, in my current line of work, it's the T-shapedness is probably not as apparent. The best comparison I can probably make is you're the customer's best friend and biggest critique at the same time. Because no matter what your opinion is, they will always ask you for your input on their kitchen, because they want to make sure they're not making a terrible decision in mixing two colors together or different designs together. So I think in the current aspect, you've still got to be T-shaped, because now we need to know all of the regulations for where you can put electrical stuff, gas stuff. You still need to be really good at your research, because most of us that do the job as thoroughly as we can will look at properties in the area, see what sort of build they are, because there's quite a heavy distinction between obviously, the newer houses are all quite modern, built quite modern, quite sleek edges, sleek colours. So those customers tend to go for more modern doors than the traditional sort of Victorian style doors with Victorian wood colours, wood finishes. So you've still got to be quite good at your research, and really you've just got to ask loads and loads of questions, because it's getting to know them that really gives you the ability to make something that they absolutely love, so much so that they can't say no to it at the end when you pull up that scary price. Because yeah, they're going to ask you a million and one questions, and even after they go away, they're going to ask you a million and one more. But even now, I do as much design as I can in my off time as well. So it doesn't just stop at work. I'm still doing my VFX. I'm still going deep into level design, lighting, all of the artistic stuff. And currently, with the current work, we build the whole thing. So you are a lot more artistic than you would be just in design itself, with this interior sort of design esque.
No, that is fascinating. I know, Terry Greer often cites the GDC talk about the door problem. And as you were talking, I was like, oh my God, Stephen is doing the door problem, but in a very different context. So, oh, that's really cool. Well, let's see. We've probably got about 2 minutes and 30 seconds before we move into kind of Q&A. We want to leave about 10 minutes for Q&A. Maybe a nice transition into Q&A would be, if you had like a sentence or two of advice for folks in the audience, about, kind of the process of seeking employment, and maybe its relationship to a T-shaped skill set. I would love to hear that. So maybe a couple sentences, a couple of sentences of wisdom or advice about, kind of the job search, and what strategies were helpful for you there. So hope I'm not putting you on the spot too much, but Ben, what would your advice be, do you think?
Um, in relation to T-shaped in particular, I guess it's it's obviously uh, it's completely okay to work on like team projects, and I'm not saying don't work on a team project or anything like that, but I think there is definitely a value in work on not necessarily a whole game, but like maybe a system or some kind of project where you do like a bit of the whole process. Like you can get like an idea of like, okay, I'm going to set up some animations here, and then you like learn how to use the animation tool in Engine, and and then like, okay, you're not an animator, maybe the animations you made are really terrible, but you have now put animations in engine which work, and you know the process of how to do it in a really simple way, and just doing that with like every part of the process, I think can be really, really valuable, just so that you can develop that kind of basic knowledge of like how other people do their jobs. Like you can't do their jobs, but you can understand like roughly what they had to do the thing that you did. They're just a lot better at it.
That's extremely good advice. That's really helpful. How about from you, Will?
Yeah, I'll try and keep it kind of short and sweet. I guess when I moved into the games industry from finance originally, and I sort of did the masters here as a sort of retraining thing.
Sure.
But one of the biggest things that actually helped me get my first job in the industry was skills I'd learned in that previous job.
Cool.
So I think one of the things that set me apart from other candidates was that because I'd worked in finance, I knew how Excel worked.
Sure.
And genuinely, if I could give one piece of concrete advice to anyone looking to get into production, especially people studying here, I am pretty sure, if memory serves, there is the university does a Excel course, a Microsoft Excel kind of qualification that is subsidized and like much cheaper than it would be in the outside world. Do it; it will almost certainly give you a sort of a bit of a leg up if you're trying to get into production, at least.
That's awesome. Yeah. Very useful. How about you, Cassie?
Uh, I actually have a few tips I've been giving to people in portfolio reviews today. Try go through them super quick.
Sure.
Try and have a variety of stuff on your portfolio, but showcase your favorite things at the front and center. Hopefully, you shouldn't need too many clicks for someone to get to the main things, the meat and potatoes, as you described earlier. If a job goes up on LinkedIn and then it closes really quickly, it may be because they've got the free version of LinkedIn, which automatically closes after 50 applications. I found out recently. I know, right? I didn't know that until quite recently. There is a gentleman called Amir Satvat. He has an amazing spreadsheet that is regularly maintained of like every game job going. He won a game award recently for his work with all the situation of the industry at the moment. And I had others that I forgot. Oh yeah, use search strings and set up job alerts. So often on job sites, yeah, you can put game designer, but you can put minus minus senior in a lot of them, minus minus lead or whatever, and then automatically it'll get rid of all of those because often they just clog it up. And then if you set up email alerts, you should only get the ones that are really useful to you in your email.
I wish I brought paper and pen.
Yeah, those are great. Those are super. I mean, the good thing is that all this is being recorded and streamed, so people can go back. Awesome. And how about from your perspective, Stephen? What do you think?
For me, one of the key things is definitely persistence. You're going to be throwing out so many of them, and loads of them you just won't get any response at all. You've just got to keep plucking at it. Especially if you know your end goal, just keep going for it. It doesn't matter if you've got to pick up another job just to pay the bills. That's what we're all here for. The job is to pay the bills at the end of the day. But especially for my current employment, it was one where I really cut down my portfolio from all of the information I previously had. I really cut down my CV that I sent across, and it just made them ask a lot more questions. Really, it made them want to get me into an interview to explain some of the things that were in it. And the interview went so well, it just went straight from there and was offered at the time. Because another important point for me is just if you are a designer in particular, just keep finding ways to bring design back into your work. Even if you're working a retail job, just maybe do some promos or like advert flyers that you could maybe drop to your boss and just keep bringing it back to design, or just freelance in your spare time as well. Just keep going forward and then keep applying to the games jobs or the software jobs or whatever you're after in the afterthought as well.
No, that's extremely helpful. Well, once more, I have talked too much and we only have 6 minutes and 30 seconds left. But I would love to see if there's any questions out in the audience. If there's anything you would want to ask our panel. Yeah, we'll just go around. So we'll start over here with Joseph Walton Rivers.
So a lot of the panel talk about picking up new technologies or learning kind of in-house or modifications of technologies that exist. Can you give any advice to students that may be familiar with certain technologies or whatever they've learned here and then go into try to apply for jobs that have these kind of custom environments or custom plugins or technologies attached to them? So in terms of like the tooling, getting used to working with it.
Will probably lead off a little bit. It'll be more
Yeah.
applicable for the game stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it is creepy almost how much of learning level design in Unity and Unreal is par and par to what I do at the moment. It is almost the exact same process, the exact same thought process, design process, and iteration. It's just a lot faster. Whereas you do like a day, have your stand up at the end of the day or stuff like that, and get iteration and feedback from your teammates in other disciplines. It's just a very condensed version where we're constantly getting feedback from the customer in real time. But all of it was so familiar, it was almost like a second home, sitting down in front of a computer and designing a kitchen in the same way almost the same way I would design an entire level. Like for one of my solo projects was a level for Darktide. It was the same process, the same. Here's where you start building it from the ground up, and and then polishing it off and making it look fancy towards the end to make your customer or whatever you're doing it for fit and happy.
Very, very good. Yeah, no, that's cool to hear that kind of transferability of software skills. And maybe one or two more questions. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Uh,
Hi, this is work. Okay. First off, just want to say huge fan of your games. I love them all. I was just wondering with the T-shaped stuff. I'm an environment artist who's also learned a bit of VFX and has dipped my toe into some other fields. How much of those other fields is really like should you really delve into to the point at which you're proficient in all those things? Because I don't want to be like having to learn 5 different things all at once to be like don't want to be spread too thin. Yes. I was just wondering what's your advice on trying to get all those different proficiencies and not overloading yourself with them?
that's a great question about balancing kind of the specialism and the T-shapedness. What's been the approach that you guys have used for that, I
I
wonder?
think taking it like one thing at a time is the approach to do it. I feel like when you have a job and you're like in a time sensitive environment, a lot of the time you kind of end up just being in a position where you have to learn something quickly. That's really valuable. But when you're like doing your own projects, maybe set out a project where you are doing something you're comfortable with, but like there's one element of it which is something that you haven't done before, which you want to try and learn. And but like don't overscope that project with too many of those things. Like maybe pick one thing in particular, or maybe like one or two things, like a second thing which is like really small. I mean, a lot of the time you can get value out of just simply like, say you want to do like some logic or something, like use an editor that has like a visual scripting like Blueprints, and just have it do something really, really simple. Like you don't need to learn how to like, I don't know, make a really complex equation in code, but you can make it like spawn some text and say a value that you want it to say, depending on what you click on in the game or something like that. And there's lots of tutorials for things like that, and it's not a very like high effort thing to learn, I think.
Yeah, that's really, really good. I'm watching these red numbers that are counting down ominously. I think there's 2 minutes left, at which point we have to be utterly off the stage. We could probably do one more question though. Yep, okay. Going back here.
In terms of the T that you mentioned, if you say had another prong coming off it that you built up just over time, how common or easy would it be to almost switch a role into more of that second prong?
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating visual analogy. So that's almost about kind of changing specialisms or kind of moving from one thing to another. Any thoughts on that potentially? Did anybody kind of start in one place and end up on another, or have you seen people do that a little bit?
I've seen people do
Seen
that.
people
Same.
do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can lead you into a different specialization. Like if you're an animator who's developed interest in programming or vice versa, then technical animation is a very sought after role to my knowledge. Like you don't get that many people who specialize in it. And it's a good one to have, I believe. And tech artist and such. And you know someone else said earlier about environment art and level design go hand in hand quite a lot. And there are some roles in industry that are kind of both. I can't remember exactly what they call it, but I applied for one on Skate, um, where it was essentially the set dressing and level design in one. They just give you the props and you go at it. Um, so I guess it does kind of depend on what the other prong is. But with any two disciplines, there's often some niche where they can meet.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thank you so much for your participation on this panel. We are literally out of time, but maybe a hand for our guests. Thanks, guys. We really, really appreciate you being here.
Cool.
Mm.